and hello everyone. I see quite a few of you have joined. Hi, nice to see you, Joey. It would be great, guys, if we could put our cameras on. It's nice to put a face to the name and also engage more thoroughly with each other. But yeah, very nice to see all of you, and welcome to the second session for IMM. Let me just quickly put up my slide. And meantime, we'll also have a few more people joining in. Um, okay. Let me know when my screen is visible, just like a thumbs up would do. Okay, I can see Pratigya nodding. Okay, just having a bit of an issue. Well, all right, there we are. So yes, welcome. So Pratigya and I are very happy to take you through the second session on impact measurement and management. Very quickly, before we really dive into the session itself, here is your training map for impact measurement and management, and what we are sort of covering throughout the curriculum delivery for this one. So this I had also shown you last time, but just to give you a sense of where we are. So we are on the second session under the introduction component or introduction, part of the entire curriculum. And soon we will be diving into strategy, management approach, governance, transparency. So the different components of impact measurement and management, that we'll be delivering over the next couple of months, along with, ending all of it into a synthesis, couple of synthesis sessions where we'll bring everything together, to really try and understand how that roadmap looks for you as for your particular venture, and how do you sort of prepare yourself to pitch your impact to investors, and not just investors, actually, to different stakeholders, both internal and external. And all of this you'll be doing with us, facilitators for you, which is Pratigya and myself, but also your impact measurement and management coaches who you will be assigned to pretty quickly. I'm sure Andrea and Mike are on that. Um, so before we, delve into, the technical aspects of the session and, some of the things that we want to cover, we also wanted to take a moment to do a very quick recap and, share some reflections from the previous module. And I know Pratigya has something really exciting lined up for all of you guys. So I will quickly hand over to Pratigya now. Pratigya, over to you.
Thanks so much, Devahuti. Exciting for me. I hope it's exciting for everyone else as well. So here we go. Are you guys ready? Open up another window like we did last week. You can do it on your phone. You will see a Mentimeter code on your screen. Please type that in and just wait. You'll see a waiting room. That's perfectly fine. Just hang on there until a few more people connect and catch up. All right, so there's a link here, www.menti.com. Please enter the code. I think it's also there in your chat box if you prefer to copy it. Okay, so let's see what we have. So what we're going to do is a really fun, but don't panic, it's completely anonymous recap quiz. And what I mean by anonymous is you do not have to give us your real name, okay? So this is going to take you to a screen now where you're going to enter whatever name you like for yourself, impact warrior, circular economist, whatever it is you want to call yourself. Give yourself a fun name and sign into the quiz. We will not call you out to identify yourself unless you make it to the top 3 in the quiz, okay? So you only get called out if there's glory involved, otherwise no. All right, so feel free to log in with any name that you like. Only 12 people have logged in so far. I hope we can get the numbers up. Come on, guys, let's keep going. We're going to do this as much as possible at the beginning of our sessions as a fun way to recap what we've learned, all right? And then followed by a little bit of more deeper discussion and reflection. Okay, so 12 players are ready. I'm going to give this another 10 seconds and then jump into the quiz. If anyone's having trouble logging in, please put a message to Mike in the chat box and to Andrea, and they will help you to get into the Mentimeter screen. Okay, everybody ready? Can I hear some voices? Are you ready? It's a silent bunch of ventures. Come on, guys. Everybody ready?
Yes,
Let's
yes.
hear some.
Yay,
Yes. All right. Okay. 14 players are ready. Let's go. Okay. The first, oh yeah, and if you answer faster, you get more points. Okay, so it's fastest finger first. The global financing gap to achieve the SDGs is how much annually? You see a bunch of options on your screen. Select only one option. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, and don't forget to click submit. So the correct answer is 4.2 trillion. Some of you might think 2.5 trillion looks familiar, and this is because Devahuti quoted this last week, saying that this gap has actually gone up post-COVID from 2.5 trillion to 4.2 trillion currently. Okay, but the correct answer is 4.2. Kudos to the guys who got this right. And we purposely shrunk the time down for you on this one. Okay, so the quicker you answer, the better. All right, so the next question is, the UNDP Sustainable Finance Team works towards what? Please choose one correct answer. You see the options on your screen. You have about 12 seconds left to answer. Please choose one correct answer. Yeah, so all of these options are correct. The team that Devahuti and I are a part of actually work on all of these areas. The objective that we have is to make sure that impact and the SDGs feature in all sorts of financial decision making around risk and return. All right, so all of these options are covered in the work that we do. Next question. So the third question is, please choose one correct answer. Just one correct answer. ESG is how the world impacts me. Impact is how I impact the world. ESG represents the efforts I make to manage risks. Impact refers to long-term outcomes, results of my efforts and actions, or all of the options are correct. Okay, I think you guys have figured out the format. So all of the options are correct. We'll have to be smarter in how we frame the questions next time. Too easy for many of you, right? Okay, so next question. We've got two more questions to go. So if you're catching up, still time for you to make the leaderboard. All right. So the next question is, workplace health and safety policies are an example of what? So Devahuti spoke last week about the differences between, earlier this week about ESG and impact measurement. What are the main, what are workplace health and safety policies an example of? So they are an example of ESG. Why? Because they're essentially about mitigating the negative risks of accidents, right? That's why you put in workplace health and safety. And ESG is essentially a risk management approach. But let's say if you were to look at employing people from low income or vulnerable groups and improving their well-being, right? And offering them above minimum wage. And you see well-being effects as a result of that employment, that becomes an example of impact. And what happens as a result of some of the policies that you implement? What happens to changes in people's lives, to the planet because of that? Whereas ESG is just the mitigation of negative risks in this case. All right, last question. And what is the question? Question is, which is not a way in which impact management can help your business? Just one answer. Correct. So 11 of you got this right. And the reason that this is the correct option is because impact management does not, in and of itself, guarantee that you will raise capital. right? It certainly puts you on the way, but ultimately, raising capital boils down to a number of things, including the financial fundamentals of your business, how you're performing in terms of profitability, scale, your brand, your reputation. So, impact is not a sole reason that you're going to generate capital, right? It's one of the reasons, but it will not guarantee by itself that you will raise capital. Okay, so great going, guys. A lot of you have got a lot of these answers correct. Now let's see where we are on the leaderboard. So the winners of this week's quiz, or the top 3 in this week's quiz, are Unicorn with 3375 points, Iron Man, and Energy Maven. So who's Unicorn? Can I ask you to identify yourselves? Who's Unicorn?
Oh, we have a hand up. Do you
Who's
want to
that? Sorry,
unmute
I
yourself?
can't see.
It's Shinta.
Shinta from Nazava.
Yes.
Congratulations, Shinta. And who's Iron Man? All right. JC from Iron Man. Sorry, JC from Cloud Tech. Congratulations. And Energy Maven. Who's Energy Maven?
It's me, Jovi. I'll tell you.
Well done. Well done, Jovi. All right. So let's note down the names, Mike, if we can, of the winners, and then we'll just see how this goes week to week. Hopefully, we see a lot more people moving to the top of the leaderboard as well. Thank you so much, guys, for your participation. Really appreciate this. Back to you, Devhuti.
Wow, that's great. It also gives me a sense of satisfaction that a lot of that training material was retained by you. So thank you, guys. It was good to see that engagement with our content. Okay, so back to my slides. Sorry, guys, I'm a little slow when it comes to just handling some of this tech stuff. Right. So I would also, like to spend a little bit of time on any reflections that you may have from the previous session. So anybody wants to add, thoughts, or if you want to discuss something, maybe you've thought about some of the things, chewed on it, and you have something to share with the group. Now is a good time to do that. Any volunteers? No?
See, I think we're seeing your notes view.
Oh, okay. Oopsie. Let me just, sorry. Sorry, guys. Let me share that. And in the meantime, if anybody has, wants to share any reflections, please do so. Pratigya can see if anybody's raising hands while I quickly try and manage my slides. Is this okay now?
Yeah,
All good.
that's good.
Okay. Okay, if there are no volunteers for the reflections, I also wanted to take a moment, to sort of respond to some of the survey responses we got. And first of all, thank you, for all of you who did submit a survey after the session. It's very important to get that feedback so that we know how to improve as we go from session to session. It's a long program, guys. So I really would appreciate if everybody could take time, even if it's a couple of minutes, to respond some of these survey and feedback on the different sessions. So there were two really interesting things that came up. So one was, where one of the respondents said it is unclear how can we verify if what we are doing in terms of measuring or collecting data as impact is also the same that can be used to report to other stakeholders. And in case there is somebody who wants to sort of react to that comment, please come in. But the way we read it is, when you think about stakeholders and what their requirements are, and this is something we'll be addressing as part of a curriculum as well, it's very important to understand, what kind of information or what are some of the material issues that are most important to your stakeholder. So for instance, if it were an investor, who's made an investment into your venture, there could be certain metrics they could be tracking. So for instance, if they're a climate fund, they could be looking at reduction in GHG emissions. If they are also looking at some social factors, they would want to look at, okay, how many green jobs were created for women, within your venture, and what is your outreach, to low income or rural households. So, those are those different metrics that investors or other stakeholders may come in and say that, while investing into you, those are some of the material issues that we would like to track and measure. And therefore, you would add that to, some of the measurements and tracking that you may already be doing. So often it's a mixture of, what you want to measure and manage and what is core to your business, and also, how some of the other stakeholders that you're engaging with, sort of add to those different layers. So it will become clearer as you do more of stakeholder mapping, understanding what the requirements are. And like I said, we will address this as part of a curriculum as well. And so thank you for raising that. The other issue and really interesting comment that came up was that, we did present some ESG scores last time to make a point around, while ESG is great as a risk management mechanism, there are certain limitations that we need to sort of address when it starts looking at impact, or when we start adding an impact lens around, so what, we have these policies in place, so what, we are making these efforts, what are some of the long-term changes that happen over a period of time. So the comment or the response, that we received was, like an ESG scorecard, we also have an IMM scorecard or a framework, to sort of land some of this in a more real world situation. So the short answer is no, we don't create an IMM scorecard, simply because there is a lot of focus in sort of creating your venture-based roadmaps as part of the curriculum delivery. So in a way, a lot of that we're delivering is agnostic, but also helps land into your specific venture context or business. So for instance, we may talk about strategy and we may talk about management approach from an impact lens, but when it boils down for an edtech firm versus an agri-focused firm versus an energy company, a lot of these scorecards, or rather metrics, and the different thresholds and benchmarks you'll be looking at will be extremely customized, and which is also one of the reasons why we have impact measurement and management coaches who will be working with you in order to land some of this in your realities and in your business context. So those are a couple of things I wanted to pick up from the last survey that we did on the previous session before moving forward. So let me take a pause there. If some of you would like to come in, share something from the last session, or even react to some of the points I made, for the 2 survey responses that we received. Okay. If there are none, maybe then I'll just quickly move forward. We will have more chances to sort of pause and reflect and, get some of your feedback in. But yes, just wanted to take that opportunity. So thanks for sharing the surveys. We do hope, that momentum will continue. You'll be transparent in sort of sharing some of your feedback from the different sessions. So today we are going to be talking about, what is the SDG impact approach? So if you remember our training map for impact measurement and management, this is the second session under the introduction component. So we'll be talking about SDG impact approach, and we'll also be introducing what we call the enterprise actions and the case study, which is going to become, one of the recurring examples that you will be using throughout the IMM curriculum delivery, to understand how some of the theoretical concepts that we are using actually lands for a real business. And this case study is not fictitious. It's actually built out of a real world example, and you'll actually be meeting, I think, the founder tomorrow, through a sharing session. And we built the case study using their example. So more to come, and Pratigya will introduce that in the coming sections of the session today. So like I said, in this module, we'll be discussing, the approach on how to fuse impact into the business DNA for yourselves, introducing the standards and the business actions and the case study. So just before, we launch into some of those, topics, just wanted to remind ourselves of, the shift in perspective that we spoke about in the last session, where we said that, we want to look at a world where our organization does not sit outside of planetary and community and social boundaries, but actually within it, so that it understands how it's impacting the economy, how it's impacting the society and the world at large, with those impacts also coming in. So it's a in a way it's a combination of what you would typically do as ESG practitioners, but with a very very strong impact lens. Where you're trying to see the relationship both inwards and outwards with these different stakeholders and with these different dimensions. So with that in mind, when we think about impact measurement and management, what does it really mean? So as the nomenclature suggests, it's basically means impact measurement, which in its essence just tries to quantify effects that your business is creating, indirectly and directly attributable to your business actions. And also then it helps you track progress against stated objectives and resulting outcomes. So very quantifiable, tangible, things that you can measure, which helps you confirm intelligently some of the assumptions that you made about the impact that you want to create. The other part of this approach is impact management, where all of the measurement that you do and all of the data that you've been using, you actually use those insights to maximize positive contributions and minimize risks. And this is interesting, right? So this means you're constantly reiterating, constantly tweaking, understanding, what are some of your actions that you're able to see in a measurable way is pushing positive impact for you and is reducing negative impact. And in some cases, you may also see that it may even increase some of the unanticipated negative impacts, right? So how do you constantly make sure you have a good eye on, some of these trends that you see coming through your data in order to optimize your positive and maximize your positive contributions and minimize some of the negative risks? And of course, how do you then imbibe the practice of learning and improving by using evidence and feedback? And it goes back, to that phrase that Rome wasn't built in a day, and so is your impact measurement and management. It's a constant reiterative process, and that's how you need to treat it, instead of thinking that it's one time cast in stone kind of activity. So from a UNDP's perspective, when we think about these impact measurement and impact management approaches, we have split it into the 4 different components that you see here on the left side of the slide, right? So it starts with strategy, which is essentially the yellow box that you see, where you start strategizing and planning, or if you've not started, you may be at a more mature stage company, you may want to revisit some of those issues and some of the strategies that you began with. Then you move to measure and manage once you have more clarity on what your strategy looks like. And we will be breaking this down into some of the actions in the coming sections of this session. And then, once you have the measurement part of it fixed, where there is some sort of seamlessness in the kind of data you're collecting, the way you're consuming data and making decisions, then it allows you to be at a really good point where you are able to report with confidence, you're able to disclose with confidence, how authentic your data is, how to engage with stakeholders. And then through that process, you're also constantly generating awareness, which means you're also doing some level of advocacy around your IMM work, around some of the best practices that you or your peers may be practicing, and then also seeing how does it all integrate back into your business. So it's really a cyclical process. And at the outside ring that you see, of this 4-step process in the central part of this diagram is governance. And governance is extremely critical to impact measurement and management. I can't say this enough, because that's where leadership, and that's all of you, in fact, in this room, are actually walking the talk. Because unless it is part of your governance process, and unless this kind of ideology and thinking is part of your business DNA, there is very little that you could do. Then IMM simply becomes like this siloed process that a small team sitting in one room is just constantly trying to do something, but it really doesn't translate into business as usual practice. years. So that's essentially how UNDP is trying to look at, integrating the impact DNA into business DNA and the different steps that are involved within. So yeah, quickly going back then, now that you've seen, what our approach is, that's exactly the reason why the curriculum also has been designed the way it has been. And that is also the reason why we have these different sessions across the different components. So there is a lot of clarity that we can drive, as you, put some of these brass tacks into your business, right? So what does strategy mean for you? What does management approach mean for you? Governance, transparency, and so on. So with that, what really is our approach, and why did we think of, thinking about a UNDP approach? So some of the questions which I still get is, there was already so much out there. There is a big market around impact management, measurement, and, measurement especially. There are so many frameworks. So why did UNDP have to come up with a framework, right? So our approach to impact measurement and management, and the reason we came up with the SDG impact standards, was to help organizations put sustainability at the core of business and investment decision making, but more importantly, supplement the already existing narrative around ESG, right? And saying that, okay, while ESG is great, very output focused, helps you manage your efforts, help you mitigate risk, we need to now start looking at impact. I think they're very delayed in that process, and doing that by taking a couple of steps back from reporting and by managing your everyday business decisions is super critical. And therefore, you have the SDG impact standards. I also mentioned this last time, or maybe I didn't, I can't remember, but with SDG impact standards, they've also been adopted by the International Standards Organization now. And as we speak, we are currently developing the ISO UNDP Management Sustainability Standards, which essentially will mean there is a single blueprint that businesses and investors and global supply chains can use in order to understand how sustainability practices are being integrated into businesses as well as across supply chains, as well as by investors. So that's a pretty radical move that has recently happened. We're going to take about a year and a half to come up with that ISO standard, but hoping that all the programs that you're going through, for instance, helps you prepare for that future. So with the SDG impact standards, we wanted to make sure that it's not just the businesses such as yourselves speaking this language, right? The burden is not just on you to create impact and to hold yourself accountable for impact, but it's also everybody else in the capital market. So we wanted to figure out a way where we could build these standards that mirror each other. So you have SDG impact standards for enterprises. That's the red standards that thumbnail that you see here. So that's for enterprises and ventures such as yourselves. But we also have standards for private equity funds and venture capital funds. We also have standards for bond issuers, and we also have standards for development finance institutions and such as ADBs and IFCs of the world. So all in all, we wanted to create 4 sets of standards that create a shared language and approach to sustainability and can be advanced as a public good, for businesses, for investors, as well as for policymakers. And what you don't see here on the screen now is we are also working a lot with governments, to try and see how they can adopt similar language. So for instance, we work with Securities Exchange Commission in Thailand, where listed companies are also using, the SDG impact standards so that everything, not only do they integrate it as part of their business DNA, but all the supply chains that are connected to them also help sort of, it also helps in their uptake of this common language around sustainability. It's a long journey, but we are getting there. So just a very quick caveat here, the SDG impact standards are not reporting standards, right? That's a busy space already. What they are that SDG impact standards are decision-focused management standards. So for instance, you may be using any reporting standard, which may be mandated, by your investor, by the local jurisdiction within which you're operating, or you may have adopted it because it fits your venture's needs the most. But what it helps you do is to take a couple of steps back, and where the SDG impact standards actually help you make decisions on an everyday basis which can help you report on whichever standard you want to, right? So in a way, it works like a friendly tool or a friendly guideline that you can intimately use to understand, okay, what are the tweaks and changes I need to make within my processes and systems that can help me or allow me to report on whatever reporting standard that is thrown my way, either by my investor or by the government or any sort of regulation that comes in. So it's really helping you prepare for that future. And like I mentioned, we are connected through the 4 interconnected themes here. You have governance, management approach, strategy, and transparency. And we look at it in more detail in the coming slides. So this one now. So here is a quick quiz for you. This is a very busy slide, and you can see how busy the ESG and the reporting ecosystem looks like. It's increasingly connected, very, very data hungry. Every day you're being demanded. Every day there's a new demand for a new kind of reporting, standard or some sort of metrics that you need to report on. But a quick question to you: do you know how many reporting standards are there in the market today? I mean, you could just take a guess. Just put some numbers in the chat. How many reporting standards on ESG or sustainability are there in the market today?
Jovi says 0. Fiona
Ooh.
says 100.
100, okay. What else? Keep them coming, guys. 10?
And Mickey says 10. Oh,
Anyone
Mikey,
else?
sorry. Yeah, so the range is from 0 to 100 so far. 20 from Bulan.
Okay, okay. Right, keep them coming, guys. But we have about 800 standards in the market today, right? It's as chaotic as that, right? They differ across sectors, they differ across industries, across jurisdictions. There is a lot of talk about, okay, how do you make this interoperable? How does a venture actually report on something, that is as big and confusing as 800 standards out there, right? So it's almost a scary proposition. So yeah, don't want to scare you, but very quickly, let's try to make some order out of this chaos, right? So you have about 800 standards out there. So what does it actually mean, right? So this is just our attempt, to sort of find some order in that chaos. So this is like a pyramid of standards, right? So at the bottom that you see are the huge global goals or your commandments, right? So you have the SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. We have our targets, we have our indicators and targets. Then you have the principles for responsible investing, which the IFC had introduced. Then there is also, as an outcome of the Sustainable Development Goals, you have the Paris Climate Agreement, you have the Sendai Agreement on disaster management, and more recently, you have the Montreal Kunming Biodiversity and Nature sort of mandate as well. So there is a lot happening on what the global goals for these big planetary issues and social issues look like. So the question for ventures such as yourselves, and some days, even I would ask is, what next? So if I have those big commandments, how do I really break this down? So then you have the reporting framework that, okay, if you are in a particular industry, let's say real estate, you're looking at, building green sort of buildings or infrastructure, here are the kind of reporting standards you could be looking at, So you have GRI, you have Social Value International with something, then you have, the Task Force for Climate and Financial Disclosures, then you also have a Task Force for Nature Disclosures, so on and so forth, right? So those are basically your reporting frameworks, which tell you what are the metrics based on which, you can define success, whether or not, you're sort of doing it right, what are the thresholds, benchmarks, so on and so forth. And then, of course, you have the regulations at the top, where increasingly now, and this is something I'd also discussed in our last session, increasingly, you're also now seeing governments coming up with mandates, right? So this could be litigation issues in sustainability, how to address them. So what are the laws around them? What are some of the rewards and recognition, and also punitive action and punishments in case there is overestimation or impact, or if there is some sort of SDG washing or greenwashing. So this is a forever evolving space. We are seeing a lot of activity happening in this part of the pyramid as well. But where we come in and where a few of similar standards come in are exactly to solve for some of these differences, where you have these commandments, right? You have these principles of practice that thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that, and these are some of the things that you do. And on the other hand, you have performance or the reporting, right? Standards, where you're talking about impact accounting, impact ratings, impact metrics, so on and so forth. But where are those standards of practice which help us navigate from those big commandments to great reporting without us being fearful of, oh, whether or not we're doing this right, whether or not we're making an overestimation or underestimation of the impact? Should we be, how confident do we feel about the data that we're putting out there? And that's where you have the standards of practice. And that's where you have the SDG impact standards, you have the impact management project and the different dimensions of impact. Again, few of these concepts that we'll be unpacking in future sessions. So the SDG impact standards essentially are just helping you bridge that gap, right? They are voluntary, they're not compulsory. You don't even have to share them with somebody. It could, like I said, it could be just your intimate friend helping you understand where you are in that process so that you can, with authenticity and confidence, report really well on the impact that you're creating. So overall, what we're trying to achieve is for an approach that is helping you drive data-driven decisions. So integrating your impact data in how you make decisions. Second, very useful for decision making, right? So we need information that is decision useful. You don't just want to be sitting with this huge, pack of data, which is really not making sense, and you're just collecting it because somebody is asking you to do it. In the end, how do you synthesize all of that can help you actually make better decisions is most important. And you don't have to search for that ultimate perfect looking framework, right? It's great to even start with some imperfect ways of doing things. But as long as you understand it's a journey, you're moving towards that perfection, you're moving towards, the ideal, that's fine. And then, of course, we need to make sure that we include both negative and positive impacts. So our approach should be such that it can help us, show the mirror to our faces. That, you know what, you assumed a few things. Is it working or not working? Or are there any negative impacts that are being created? How do you manage that? So that's an important part of any impact measurement and management approach that you adopt for your ventures. Then based on meaningful stakeholder engagement, so it should amplify the voices of people who experience the impact that you're creating. So how do you create those spaces? How do you create those platforms? How do you create that space for you to understand, what are those material impacts that your stakeholders want to see, right? And then finally, how do you see the convergence between reporting and management? So from a data hungry and reporting obsessed sort of focus to really taking a few steps back and saying that, how do I manage my day-to-day better? What are some of the things that we need to integrate into the DNA of a business so that, both are speaking with each other, both the management part as well as the reporting part. So that's essentially the overall approach that we're trying to adopt, and something that we hope will also be reflected as we deliver the curriculum around impact measurement and management. So I want to take a quick pause there. I see something in chat box.
There's a comment from Jovi.
Mm-hmm. Jovi, do you want to come in and share this?
Look, I guess this is a great approach. I definitely buy into it. I understand the importance and how and why we should be incorporating them into our business operations. Given the amount of data that you were just mentioning earlier, I think the biggest challenge is to understand which of the data and where can we source data that would really make the most sense to synthesize for our business and strategy. Because the challenge here is to figure out what is the right data to then follow, to synthesize, and to bring on to our operations. Filtering is going to be the biggest challenge, I think, for us.
That's very interesting, Jovi. Yes, absolutely. And hopefully, some of the things that we will be sharing with you through the curriculum delivery will help you exactly address that. So for instance, what are some of the material issues? Which ones do you need to even prioritize right now, right? Everything can't be a priority. So
Correct.
that kind of lens really helps you, become more grounded about things that you can possibly achieve and things that you can possibly manage right now. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a very interesting point. Pratigya, would you also like to react to that? And
Yeah, I mean, Jovi, this is like the universal question, right? When you're a venture, how much data do you really need? And some of the tools that we'll take you through your IMM workbook and also different modules in the curriculum will help you to do exactly that. So what is the data that you need to really get to your impacts in terms of, let's say, your theory of change? So how do you map your indicators, for example, onto your theory of change? Materiality, as Devahuti said, right? Reporting, what sort of data do you need for reporting? So all of this we're also going to address as we go through the curriculum. And hopefully by the end of this program, you will have a clearer sense of what data you need for what purpose. And what's the level of resource investment that you actually need to collect that data? Is it really within the scale of your ambition to collect certain types of data that you're looking to collect, and how do you go about doing that? So we'll have all of these conversations with you in the modules, and then also specific challenges which are very, very custom to your business, you can also discuss with your IMM coaches in the mentorship sessions. So thank you. Excellent question.
thank you. And then moving on with that, so what does that approach really mean in practice? Right. So I described, the 4 sets of standards that we have. So for the purpose of this program, since all of you are ventures, we're going to be using the SDG impact standards for enterprises. And when I say using, it's really like the broad guideline that we'll be using. And you will see how we've broken it up into different business actions. So for the SDG impact standards, like I said, we want to make it something that you can look at and see that, okay, this is something I can do, right? So it doesn't need to be super theoretical. We don't want to be, very high level and just talk about these high level principles, but we want to break it down into doable business actions, which is where we have this next slide for you. And let's pause on this slide for some time, right? So the headline says it's the 12 SDG impact enterprise actions. So really, the 12 things that you need to do to get your IMM in order or get your impact measurement and management in order. I mean, it's easier said than done, but really, it's just helping you understand that journey. What does it look like as you navigate it through the 4 different components, which are strategy, management approach, transparency, and governance. And it's actually very interesting because, I've done this quite a few times. I've spoken with several stakeholders, businesses, banks, when we share the standards with them. And it's interesting where we see that recall where, they say that, okay, these are also the 4 components I would think of, purely from a financial perspective, when I think of a business, right? I will have a financial strategy on how to make sure I hit the kind of, hit the kind of bottom line, financial bottom lines that I'm aiming for through my business. I will have a management approach where I break it down into KPIs, in order to understand how will that business work and get me to where I want it to work, in terms of the profitability that we're trying to gauge. And again, there is a lot of financial accounting that is under the whole transparency thing, which makes you an authentic business, viable business, something that investors are comfortable investing into and stakeholders are comfortable engaging with, right? So you have the transparency bit as well. And then, of course, corporate governance is really mandated as part of your financial performance and in recognizing you as a viable and a credible venture. Now imagine using that same lens for impact, right? So what you see, the 12 actions here actually are just breaking down all of those actions when you think about impact measurement and management. So they've been built with a single purpose, this framework that you see, which is to move, impact measurement and management from a siloed approach, a reactive approach where, somebody might just ask for, hey, do you have a impact report? And you quickly scramble to put one together. So from that siloed and a reactive approach to now looking at, one that is very well integrated in the DNA of your everyday business, right? So not only is it a long-term process, but the approach to IMM will also shift as your business grows. And as you add more products and services and offers, and as you engage with more stakeholders, and as the context around you changes. So in that respect, the 12 actions that you see here are also very, very iterative. So let's just break it down, right? So I mentioned the 4 components. So let's see a strategy, for example. So all the yellow actions that you see here, from 1 to 5 come under strategy, which is foundational to your impact measurement and management work. So it starts with a commitment. So for instance, if you were a financial service provider, you would say, we want to improve financial health of low income families in Vietnam, for instance, right? And then the question is, okay, how do you understand the context, which is your second business action, within which your this commitment to sustainability, commitment to impact lies. So you will try and understand what is the context in which this problem is articulated. Why are households financially excluded? Or is it an access issue? Is it an infrastructure issue? Is it a design issue, like in terms of the products? Or is it a market penetration issue where maybe some pockets of the market are well penetrated, but others are not? Who are the most excluded? What are some of the negative impacts of current market solutions, limitations that need to be addressed, etc.? So that's really the second business action. The third is, once you know that what are some of these issues which are material to some of these stakeholders that you're trying to address, how can this translate into selecting which are the ones that you want to prioritize? So you may be a founder team that does certain things really well. So you may know how banking products work or how financial products are designed. You may want to take care of that. But there are certain other issues such as livelihood issues, or technical advisory to some of these micro businesses or low income households, for which you may want to partner or which you may not be able to prioritize immediately, right? So that kind of thinking on how do you want to integrate that into your purpose and strategy then becomes a very important part of how do you land exactly those material issues that you want to work on, based on which you will then move to setting goals, which is now in line with all of that research that you have done, from your commitment to understanding the context to integration, right? And then you constantly keep adjusting. So interestingly, number 5 is one that you keep revisiting as you grow as a venture, right? So you'll constantly keep adjusting your strategy and goals in order to optimize impact. So this could be because you're expanding into new geographies. This could be because you're introducing new products. This could even be because you've suddenly realized things didn't work the way you anticipated them to work, and you need to pivot, right? So that early warning signal system is something that you need to put in. And that's exactly how, one of the aspects of your impact journey should look like. And then the next set of blue business actions that you see are that once you have your foundational strategy in place, how do you then align yourself as a venture, right? Your culture, the structure, do you make it part of the KPIs and the statements of purpose, for different cadre of management within your organization? Who owns these things, right? Who's driving it? Is it part of the KPIs of the senior most management, or is it just, the frontline staff? What are the differences therein? Then how do you actually develop a measurement framework that helps you put that big ambition in practice, right? So that measurement framework, how do you implement it? How do you decide, how many times should you be collecting data? Who should you collecting the data from? The frequency of it, and so on. And once you then actually have the data, you look at number 8, where you integrate that data into your decision making, where you actually start saying that, yes, now I have enough data to make intelligent choices, right? That could be by virtue of secondary data or primary data that you're yourself collecting. And then again, 9 is like number 5, where you are embedding all of this data for continuous improvement, right? So it's again bringing back that whole idea that this process is iterative, it's not cast in stone, and you have to constantly keep maneuvering across these different changing contexts. And then this one pink, or slightly red pink business action that you have is under transparency, where you try and see that with all the data that you have collected, how do you create platforms and spaces for your stakeholders to engage with you for feedback, and whether their issues that they had raised earlier on have been addressed how well they have been addressed. And so it's not just about disclosing your data, but it's also to improve your accountability by making sure that the your disclosures are equitably available to all your stakeholders, right? So it's not just your investors or other shareholders, but even the consumers who engage with you, so that they can make a decision whether they continue to engage with you or give feedback to you. And the last piece is governance, 11 and 12, where we're talking about how does the leadership and governing bodies walk the talk. And I feel the group we have in this room today are really critical in driving some of the governance issues in a venture. So our impact and sustainability related topics part of your board meetings, our senior leadership KPIs tied to impact commitments. What are some of the actions that you've taken to push positive impact, and that actions to reduce negative impact? So that really determines the whole governing aspect around this. So sorry, I've spent a lot of time on this slide, but I just wanted to tell you, or rather really put this in context, that even as we roll out the curriculum and the sessions that are to come after this one, think about this, use this as some sort of blueprint. And it's all right if you feel, oh, I seem to have done a few things, but I don't seem to have any idea about others. Or some of you may even feel that you've done some part of everything. Or some of you may feel that, we are barely at a beginning stage. It's absolutely all right. It is a journey. Things don't have to be perfect from day one. It's basically all the commitment that you build, the commitment that you put in to build and ensure that, this journey is gaining maturity as your venture grows is what is important. So with that, those were the 12 SDG impact enterprise actions that I wanted to share with you. Like I said, these will be a blueprint. These will also be a blueprint for us as we deliver the sessions that are coming up. So I wanted to pause there again very, very quickly, because I know I've taken a lot of time and we have some really interesting stuff with Pratigya as well. But anything that you would like to reflect on or share at this point? Okay, no. So with that, I just wanted to take a couple more minutes, very quick ones, to sort of talk a little bit about where does one go from there. I mentioned that, the SDG impact standards have been adopted by the ISO. So we are currently developing what we call the management sustainability standards. So the idea is to really develop a market ecosystem around it, where these standards don't sit in isolation, where it's not just, the like-minded ventures or, ventures who are already very conscious just using it, but there is some market action that pushes for the adoption, pushes for recognizing and rewarding positive impact behaviors, and also helping build capacities around it. So there's a lot of work that is happening in that process, and we're very glad that we're able to share this already with you, in order to prepare yourself for that future. And finally, we have different sort of tools and different resources available online. A lot of work that UNDP does in this space are created for public good. So none of these are behind any paywalls or such. You can actually look at it. So you have the standards online, you have a self-assessment tool online. We also have a Duke case, a course that we developed with the University of Duke, which we know now many organizations are using to train their employees on impact measurement and management. And then, of course, we have the guideline with ISO. So all of this is available online in case you want to read. And my last slide is just, to give you a sense of, what does uptake currently look like. It's really a very, very small slice of the different organizations, funds that we are working with, and who have shown interest and have adopted the SDG impact standards. So with that, I'll pause in case there are no questions. Over to you, Pratigya, and sorry for eating a little bit into your time.
No worries at all. Is it okay if we just go back to your resources slide? I just want to flag one thing that may be of interest to the ventures. So guys, you're probably thinking as a venture, I mean, this is all nice, but I don't have a lot of time on my hands, and I really need to get business done. And I see some of you nodding, and I get it because we've worked with a number of ventures in the past, and we know that you guys spend probably 70% of your day fighting fires and doing your business, right? So there's a couple of things here that I think you can look at if you're interested in trying to understand how other companies are doing this. And you want to look at some very quick and inspiring examples of that. So one thing I would recommend is on the bottom right-hand side, you will see the business call to action, impact case studies. Oh, sorry, no. So this is on the bottom, the impact lab. So in the impact lab, if you see, this used to be a tool that was developed by UNDP, and now it's sort of set up an independent website. You will find on that site a number of case studies of different companies that have gone through the IMM journey. And they span different countries, sectors. You will find a lot of companies from your own sector. If you're looking at health, you're looking at education, looking at climate, you will find plenty of examples and very, very simple, easy to read case studies that show you what the company has done on impact, how they've looked at indicators, how they've designed a theory of change. So even if you just look at one case study that's from your sector, you'll get some inspiration and maybe some ideas on how to advance yourself a little bit more on impact. So I would definitely recommend that. The other thing which I would recommend, and I think Devahuti mentioned it as well, is the Duke University course on impact. And this, I would say, particularly for those of you who can put in some sustained time over the next few weeks, or if you have a new joinee that's coming in to work with you on impact, for example, and you just want to quickly orient them on impact, they're not a part of this program necessarily. The Duke University course is also a really good one. It was designed in collaboration with UNDP. And what's interesting about that is that it gives you IMM from the perspective of both a venture and an investor. So it looks at both sides of the coin simultaneously. So if you do have time to invest in that over the next few weeks, you can do that. And I think there's a not a very high fee, but there is a fee if you want to get certified in the course. You can audit the course for free, but if you want to get certified, you have to pay a nominal fee. So those are the two that I just wanted to flag to you very, very quickly. Thanks. Okay, so coming back to our deck. Just give me 1 minute to share the screen, and I promise to wrap up very, very quickly so that we can let you go hopefully a little bit early today. I will try. Okay. Can you see my presentation screen?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we are going to introduce to you the case study. So firstly, I just want to explain why we're looking at a case study. So I've been a part of a number of UNDP programs in the past 7 years or so that I've been associated with UNDP, working with ventures in various capacities. And one of the things ventures always tell us is that we want to learn from a real example, right? We don't want some theory on why you should look at impact. We just don't just want a document or a framework on what to do in IMM. We want to see how somebody's actually done this and learn from them. So what we've done in this program, we've always used case studies in the past, but in this program, we've invested a lot of time and resources designing for you a very, very detailed case study where each IMM concept that we take you through, right? Each enterprise action is going to be explained to you in the modules. And then for each enterprise action, we're going to give you a set of tools or even a single tool that help you to apply that action to your company. Now, why the case study is important in this context is because we are using that real world case study to illustrate to you how a company such as yourselves has actually done this. So what does that application of that tool or that enterprise action look like for that particular company? So the process we're following is something like this, right? So first, we are going to introduce the case study to you, which we're going to do today. Then we are going to be giving you an IMM workbook with a set of templates. So every time we explain a concept to you, there's going to be a tool or a template for you to apply that concept for your company. So this will come to you in bits and pieces so that it's not an overwhelming workbook that we give you in one shot. It's going to come to you in parts as and when we explain a concept to you. So first, we're going to illustrate the application of those IMM tools to you through the case study company, which in this case is MYCL, and I'll introduce the company to you in a minute. Now, in your workbook, you will get those templates which will be used to apply the IMM tool to the venture. But before you do that, you would have seen how the case study company has done it for themselves, right? So you will see a real world application of that tool. Then once you get that workbook template, you can attempt to populate that template in your own time. So you work on it like homework, looking at the example and trying to understand how you would do it for your own business. And then when you get to your IMM mentorship sessions or your coaching sessions, your coaches would work with you on those workbooks and templates to refine them further. So you would send that template to your mentor beforehand. The mentor would give you some written feedback, and then they would discuss that with you in your mentorship session. Does that make sense? Is that clear so far? Anything unclear or confusing? Okay. All right. So when is mentorship going to happen? I can hear some of you asking. So you're going to have 4 mentorship sessions, okay, through this program. And again, this is 4 IMM mentorship sessions. This does not include the business mentorships that CI would have discussed with you or will discuss with you separately. So this is one of the most intensive mentorships that we have ever designed in the IMM programs in UNDP. And again, we've done this based on feedback from past programs where typically we had only 1 or at max 2 mentorship sessions. Mentors have told us that they want a lot more on impact just because it's so technical, right? So we have tried in this program to give you very, very detailed impact mentorship, and it's really up to you to take advantage of the opportunity to work with an IMM expert on your specific IMM issues for your company. So there'll be 4 mentorship sessions. The first one will be in June, the second in August, the third in September, and the fourth around October. These dates are rough. The specific date might change, but the months will broadly stay the same. Now, once you go through that mentorship, you will have a complete IMM workbook that helps you to speak to all of the different enterprise actions that Devahuti described and understand how those IMM tools get applied to your business, including things like what data you should track, how you define your sustainability commitments, what aspects of impact you should put in your pitch deck. All of this, right, will get covered in the mentorship and the workbooks that you work on. Once all of this is done in the synthesis segments, which are towards the end of the program, you'll also be able to practice your pitch, which integrates some of the IMM aspects that you've developed through the various templates of your workbook, and you pull those out and see what is most relevant to pitch to investors on demo day. And that's, again, something that your mentors will help you to work on. The other thing I wanted to flag, which is also very unique to this program, is that you will get guidance on an IMM roadmap, which is basically when you're going through mentorship, you will probably identify some challenges that you cannot resolve today on impact and will take you time to resolve. And those are things that you will articulate for yourselves in a roadmap that you can use for the future with how you address these issues going forward. Devahuti also spoke to you about a self-assessment on the SDG impact standards. There is a very sophisticated tool out there that helps you to assess yourself on the SDG impact standards and builds the base for future assurance should you be interested in looking at that. So we'll also make a small beginning in this program to help you to start looking at that standard self-assessment and really assessing for yourselves where you stand on the enterprise actions and the SDG impact standards. And we'll do it in a very basic way in this program. But those of you who are more advanced can get more sophisticated on this with your ventures. And then there'll also be a baseline survey, which is basically a tracking tool to track your performance through this program. So I'm going to pause there. And through this program and beyond, the baseline survey will also track your performance post-program on impact. So I'm going to pause there for a second and just see if there are any questions in chat on the case study, on the workbook, and on mentorship. And just let me know if you want to ask anything. If not, I will move forward to introducing the case study company very, very briefly. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward and very, very quickly introduce to you the case study company. I'm going to play a short 4-minute video that speaks to the company. But basically, what I want to tell you is that this is a company that we had worked with in the past in one of the first programs we did in Indonesia. This was a program that UNDP had implemented, I think, with 500 startups. And this was a company that came out of that program in 2022. I think they had a 1.2 million fundraise They did a round, and also they are extremely popular globally today, having featured in a number of international fashion events, and I think including even Paris Fashion Week. But I will let the founder speak to you about that when we have a session with him tomorrow. For now, what we're going to do is just play a short video for you to introduce the company, and then we can talk a little bit about next steps. So let me just switch my screen for a second to the video. And yeah, okay. Here we go. All right, can you all see the video?
Yes.
I miss.
Can you hear that? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did? Okay, great. I'm going to start again.
I miss the smell of clean air. I live in a place that's supposed to be the lung of the earth with 100 million hectares of rainforest. But unfortunately, every year, 100 million tons of CO2 emissions are emitted from burning agri-crop waste.
For me personally, creativity is about not just seeing problems and just giving up, but try to look for solutions. We are MYCL. Let me show you how we turn agroforestry waste into a sustainable alternatives for leather made out of mushroom mycelium. The first one that I met is actually Anissa.
We have been friends since junior high school.
Areka, I know him since childhood.
Me? Okay.
Adi is my classmate.
I was invited by others actually.
So yeah, it's all tangled up. The one thing that connects us is innovation excites us. For us, the future technology should be sustainable technology. When you burn crops, the smoke itself is one of the main causes of respiratory diseases.
Watching my daughter struggle to breathe, it was very exhausting.
My son got pneumonia twice in a year. So I'm very passionate to do something to decrease the air pollution.
So we saw problems and opportunities as two sides of the same coin. We asked the farmers not to burn their waste, but sell it to us so we can process it to grow leather-like materials with mushrooms. Even my parents doesn't really understand what I do. Like, you're mushroom farmers. Okay, you're mushroom farmers. We actually get the inspiration from tempe. Tempe is Indonesian traditional food, soybeans bonded with mushroom mycelium. So we use similar concept, but we replace the soybeans with agroforestry waste. We mix it up with water. We pour the mushroom spores inside, and then we let them sit for a couple of weeks. And then once it's become thick enough, we can actually peel it off. We make sure that the fungi is dead. We put moisturizer to keep it flexible. We do coatings as well to keep the abrasion strength more durable. And then voila, afterwards you have your mylia. So we can create any wearable objects that usually use leather. We can replace it with mylia. It looks like leather, it's natural like leather, but it's not leather, it's mycelium. It's better.
We have hundreds of artisans, designers around the world using our products.
Jadi tim R&D kami langsung melihat, ya ini sesuatu yang punya nyawa. Ada nyawa di mana material ini unik, mungkin one of a kind di Indonesia atau di dunia, yang tidak mungkin bisa ditiru atau dipunyai oleh material yang lain.
We have an indirect beneficiary from the farmers selling agri-crop waste.
Soalnya kan jadi nantinya nggak ada dampak kebakaran. Kalau sebelum gabung kan ada ini nih, ada di bawah. Nah, sesudah gabung sama di sini, alhamdulillah.
We want these materials to be affordable and available for all, so we can create greater impacts not only for the environment but also for the society.
We see that we only scratching the surface. The beauty of this mycelium technology is we can create more and more new innovations to save the planet.
Because this is all of our planet, we need to be thinking about how can we solve these huge problems by collaborating with each other. We all believe that mushroom can save the world. Yeah.
All right. So coming back for a second to the deck. Okay. So just very quickly to summarize what MYCL is doing, I think it's pretty clear from the presentation, but essentially they're a biotech company based in Indonesia that develops this high performance leather-like material from mushroom mycelium. Mycelium is essentially a type of fungus. So what their USP really is that they developed a technology to produce mycelium leather, but without using any harmful chemicals. So they have a proprietary method that grows these kinds of fibers into sheets using agri-crop waste, as you saw in the video. And importantly, their post-treatment processes, as you know, traditional leather production uses a lot of harmful chemicals to treat the leather. But MYCL's post-treatment processes do not use harmful chemicals and chromium, and they still improve the quality of mycelium fibers. So the final result that you see is this leather-like material, which is not really leather, but it looks like leather. It does not use any animal leather, no PVC, no harmful chemicals, and negative carbon footprint. So they also have a number of granted patents. 2 specifically are listed here, and you'll hear more about the company tomorrow. So what are we going to do tomorrow? Tomorrow, you're going to hear from Adi. He's the co-founder and CEO of MYCL. Now, a little bit more information about the company is on this slide, but most of it you've already seen in the video. So come prepped with your questions on what you'd like to ask Adi. And one other thing we've asked Adi to specifically talk to you guys about is how they've really used impact in their journey, in their business, how they use it for business decision-making, how it's helped them, to engage with various stakeholders. So you'll be hearing also about that from Adi tomorrow. So do take advantage. He's a busy man. He's spared a lot of his valuable time to speak to us tomorrow. And I'm sure there's going to be rich discussion. So he'll speak for about half an hour, and then there will be about half an hour for you all to ask your questions and speak about your specific challenges and get his inputs and thoughts on that. So I'm going to stop there. As I promised, we'll let you go a little early today, but happy to take any questions if you have any. Thank you. Oh yeah, and we would love to hear your feedback on today's session as always. So Andrea has put the feedback link in the chat box. As always, it really helps to improve the sessions. And we'd really, really love to help from you so that we can improve, hear from you so that we can improve week to week. We actually do spend time going through your feedback. Every comment is reviewed by our team. So please be assured that your feedback and inputs are really, really valuable to us. Any final thoughts, reflections, comments before we close the section?
Hi.
Hi.
Just a few reflections, I guess, from today's session. So, for our products, the main stakeholders are like the clinics and the patients. We directly affect the clinics, but the patients indirectly. But of course, at the end of the day, healthcare is for the patients, and that's who we greatly impact. But we wouldn't be able to like measure the impact on them without measuring first the impact on our partner clinics. So right now, what I'm thinking, like our challenge currently is setting up these measurement tools and framework so that the monitoring or like the data collection is like constant. Like we're constantly measuring them. So right now, what I'm thinking is, for us, is we need to sit down and really strategize on how we can really integrate these tools in our current product. Like as mentioned earlier, like if we focus our time mostly on putting out fires. So if it's strategically designed in such a way that it's part of our core business, or like it's part of what we do every day, then I think it's something that we can do. So right now I think setting up those measurement tools, maybe integrating them into our current product, is something that would be our first step into really measuring our impact, and also being very practical about it, like breaking it down into KPIs and making sure that someone is in charge, or like someone owns the process of really measuring them. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I really that I pick up from this session, that gives us, our team, something to think about. Yeah, so thank you.
Great reflection. Dee, do you want to respond on that?
No, just very happy to hear all those points. And yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic point. It's so you're a B2B solution, right? You're working with Kleenex, but the end game is really how the patients are to be benefited, right? So how do you creatively work to ensure you get what you want in a fairly authentic way, which you can help you make decisions. So thank you for making all those points, and looking forward to sort of dive into some of those issues as you work on your own specific impact measurement and management framework. Pratigya, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so Miki, I think the good news for you is that we have a tool that helps you to exactly assign responsibility for specific indicators. So it helps you to assign what resources you're going to need to track data on that indicator, right? How that indicator links to your theory of change, so you realize how important it is to your company. And then also who's the person or people or teams responsible for that. So you actually will have a very clear structure in place on who needs to collect that information. And it goes even further to say, how is that information going to be used for making decisions? It'll come a little later in the program, but I promise you it's there.
All right, thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Hi, Fiona.
Yeah. How does this sink into the whole business planning process? Right. Or are you asking people to work in parallel, or to do this as a separate exercise?
Sure. I can take a stab at that, Pratigya. Please feel free to come in as well. Fiona, you've actually hit the nerve right where it should be. We actually want it should be aligned with, business decisions. And when I say I want, it's not just, basically how we want to look at it, but where we feel that impact measurement and management often loses its sheen if it is only seen as a separate exercise, as a good thing to do. The moment you start making sense of it from a business perspective. So, for instance, Mickey made a point around, whether or not the patients are actually benefiting from all the help they are offering to the clinics. So it will have both a business repercussion from a customer stickiness point of view, whether the patients keep coming back because the clinics are catering to them with affordable solutions, with solutions that are working for them. And it also has an impact perspective, right? Because you are in the end impacting, better health metrics. You're contributing to that through the solutions that you're offering. So I guess finding that right balance between what impact value that you're creating, but at the same time, it's also leading into or leading to better business outcomes for you. Those are, that's a sweet spot that we need to sort of figure out. And I wouldn't say it's simple. It is a challenge, and something as basic as from an intention start point, where do business founders, and that means all of you in this room, actually see value in bringing these two together? Or do you still think it's a siloed approach? If you think it's a siloed approach, what are we missing, right? Have you done that research? Have you seen those materiality issues which impact both your business and impact, impact outcomes in the same way. And if not, then how do we bridge that gap? So that's also one of the focus areas for us through this curriculum. And the reason why, we are also encouraging, as you talk to your business mentors, as you talk to your IMM coaches, and as you work, as a team together, how do you make sure you bring both of these aspects of your business and impact as close as possible? And if it is not working, let us know. I mean, we would love to understand how we could help, solve some of those friction areas. Pratigya?
Yeah, maybe I can just add. And Fiona, it's a super brilliant question. So, is it a parallel process or is it a part of the same process? Now, it's easy for us to say how we think this could work, right? But you have to tell us how it pans out in practice. So let's say, so in this program, right, you're going through some business models, you're going through some IMM modules, and you're probably thinking, okay, do I need to think of these as two separate things? No, because ultimately we're working with the same founder, right? So it's in your brain that all of this comes together, even though we are communicating it to you as let's say 2 tracks in this program, right? So you've got modules around impact, you've got modules around business. But let's say you're having a discussion, and this will be one of the first IMM tools we talk about, which is around defining your company's commitment to sustainability. Now, that could happen in parallel to your vision and mission discussions as a business, right? It doesn't have to be a separate IMM topic that you're looking at differently, but there is a meeting of your senior management in the company where all these issues get discussed together. And then you look at who has to endorse this commitment, this high-level sustainability commitment when it goes out, let's say through your CEO speak or your founder speak on your website. Who is it that really needs to endorse this commitment internally as well as externally? Again, that is not a conversation that is only about, some CSR representative in the company talking about impact, right? That could come from your CEO. So we see these impact aspects as being integrated into the business, but how you integrate it in your everyday business and discussions is really up to you because it varies company to company. But we don't see them as being two separate things. We would like to see that they come together and are discussed in the same kind of meetings. Another example would be risk, right? So you might talk about financial risk in your company, right? And that might be something that you do, with your finance team. But why not also simultaneously have a discussion around impact risk and how that affects the profitability of your business, right? And we'll come to those impact risk discussions also later on in this program. But then as a founder, it's up to you how you put these things together and have common discussions in your business about these issues. Does that make sense? By the way, all the questions were brilliant. I didn't mean to say only Fiona's was brilliant. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, you're saying something, Fiona?
No, just thanks. Because I'm trying to wrap it around my head that we have to spend energy in 2 separate parallel efforts rather than integrating into one, which to me would be optimizing already, limited and stretched resources from a resource perspective, but ideally going after your goal, it should be a single process.
Yeah,
End of the day. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you can't afford to have one person in the company exclusively looking at IMM, right? It's got to be mainstreamed in a venture, especially if you're an early stage venture. You've got to mainstream it across your existing business functions, right? So we don't necessarily recommend that you should have one dedicated resource who's only doing IMM. We say that there are several members of your team who should know how to do this, and it should be a part of your everyday business. And that also, I think, speaks to the point that you're making about how to optimize stretch resources. So guys, I did end at 10 minutes before time. I'm glad there are questions and happy to go up another 5 minutes if need be. So please feel free to ask questions. We're more than happy to have these conversations with you. Anyone else before we close? Okay, so lastly, tomorrow is going to be a session with MYCL, as I said, and then next week I'm gonna come in and start taking you guys through strategy. So I'll be the main facilitator for the strategy and management approach sessions. Devahuti was the main facilitator for introduction. And then Devahuti will come back again and take you through governance and transparency later on in the program. But you're going to be stuck with me from next week onwards for a few weeks. Okay? Look forward to seeing you all. And of course, Devahuti will be around to support, as will Mike and Andre as well. Thanks, everyone, for your participation. Devahuti, do you want to close?
No, that's all, Pratigya. Looking forward to the session with Adi tomorrow, guys. Please do join. It should be quite exciting. And then, yeah, rest of the IMM work as well. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
See you
Bye.
tomorrow.
See you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow.
See you.
Bye-bye.